Simon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, this is a bit different. I normally sit across the table here with heads of school or eminent leaders in education, and it's a bit different, but I'm excited. It'll be an interesting chat. I'd like to start by asking a little bit about you. Who are you and what do you do?
Okay, my name is Simon. I'm actually a private English tutor. And the reason how I got in touch with Ruth was that I actually have an Instagram channel that I've been running for a few years. And from there is where I get the majority of my students. And now I mostly tutor adults in Hong Kong who are usually struggling with English for work. And sometimes I get students because, how parents like to make their children learn English in Hong Kong.
So, just take me back, if you don't mind, just a few years when you were at school. So what was your education like?
I was educated in America. So I actually went through the English learning process myself because I went there when I was 6. So at the time, for the first few years, I had those, what do we call ESL lessons, just so that I can catch up. And after a few years, I was caught up and then I was just having lessons with everyone else. And I think now that I'm in Hong Kong, now that I returned to Hong Kong and I found that, people actually, they go through the same struggles. And I think this is one of the reasons why I became a tutor.
Yes, I'm interested to talk to you about, you obviously work with a lot of adults. But just to clarify, so you were born in Hong Kong and
I
you stayed
was.
here for the first 6 years.
Yes.
So at that time, I guess you would have said your first language was Cantonese.
I would say so.
What would you say now?
I would say it's Cantonese. It's interesting because when I returned to Hong Kong upon graduation from the States, my Cantonese was not that good because I've been speaking English for so many years. And my dad actually told me that I need to improve my Cantonese. Otherwise, I'd lose the advantage of being bilingual, because if I'm limited in my Cantonese, then it's almost like I'm an Asian person who speaks English.
Yeah.
Right? Then I have no advantage at all.
So then you found it quite easy to, it was dormant, but you had the language.
Yes. So basically it was being immersed and then being observant to how people speak and then try to use Cantonese whenever I can. Yes.
What do you think is the definition of first language? Because I think that in many other countries it's a lot easier to define, but Hong Kong's language landscape is so interesting. People are so mixed up, I suppose, in a good way.
I believe I would define first language as the first language that you use, what comes to mind when you're thinking. So if you're thinking Cantonese, I think you can probably consider Cantonese your first language.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know because I have no other languages to think in, unfortunately. And, because I grew up in the UK, as I think I told you, and it's just language learning is so bad and it's so late and so bad. But, my kids grew up in Hong Kong, so that's another story for another time, but I think hopefully I put it right for them, and they learned in Chinese schools in Mandarin. So what do you think, like your education was a full American, like a public school, like a normal non-fee paying school? Was it?
Yes, it was public schools all the way through university. And then, I went like 2 hours away from home to attend university. But it's still
so
like
not
a state
far.
university.
Right.
Yeah.
So going back like primary, secondary school, like how would you characterize that style of learning, and did you enjoy it?
Aside from the bullying, it was okay.
Oh.
It was okay. It was just like being immersed in that environment. And a lot of things are still quite new to me, like at the time, perhaps just learning the names of different things around me. Yeah, so I think it was okay.
So you're referring to the early, like the transition phase when, like you say, you arrived with like no English or a little bit of English? How do you remember how it made you feel?
It made me feel kind of helpless, I would say. I would say that's the feeling. So people are talking around you and then you hear people laughing, and then that means you missed something or you missed a joke. But not many people are nice enough to go and explain it to you. And then I think in the first few years, that was like one of the bigger struggles. Like emotionally, it was quite tough as well. But of course, that also became like the motivation, right? To push you so that you understand those hidden jokes. And all those different
Exactly.
things.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, I guess kids can be mean. And also probably the environment that you were in. I think like I'm obviously very sensitized towards that. And you've got children coming in from all different countries with little English. And I think that we are, sensitive to that, and that the other children wouldn't be bullying them. But I guess if you're in the minority in
Yes,
that
that is
sense.
true. Yes.
But you're right. It's interesting, and probably this also relates to your adult students, that for children, learning a language, I think that the way that they're going to be motivated is by necessity. For some reason, whether it's to make a friend or get girlfriend, boyfriend, or whether it's to order something to eat or to be able to use public transport or to be able to just move around in a city.
Yes, I think most people do not sense that urgency until they encounter that situation. And unfortunately, they don't understand it takes time to build up the language. And then at the time, they're like struggling because they want that result very quickly.
How long do you think it took you to, because I think you talk about mastery quite a lot in your approach, in your tutoring. How long, as a 6-year-old boy, you arrived in New Jersey. When do you think you would have considered that, yeah, I've nailed this, I've mastered the English language?
I think I believe I caught up with everyone else maybe in the 3rd year of my, I would say, secondary school. So 9th grade, I would say it took quite a while.
Several years.
Like 4, 5, 6 years, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. And you were immersed in it. So everything, day in, day out, going everywhere, doing everything was in English.
Yes.
At home, were you still speaking Cantonese as a family?
Yes.
Yeah.
My dad would speak Cantonese to us because his English is limited as well.
Still?
Yes.
Having lived in New Jersey for how long?
My dad's been there even longer than we have. I think he left Hong Kong perhaps 6, 7 years before us. But because he didn't really have an education in America. So I think just to pick up English from like everyday like interactions, that would be like much harder than being in a school, I would say.
Or maybe he didn't have the necessity to do so.
Possibly he worked in a Chinese restaurant.
Yes. That explains it. So he lived in among his, it's interesting. Like, so when I had children in Hong Kong in 2005, 2007, I knew that I wanted them to learn not only to speak Chinese, but to read and write it. And I was in the minority at that time. People thought I was mad. They thought I was bonkers and I'd lost the plot. And I remember my own background. Like, I grew up in a suburb of London where a lot of immigrants came.
Okay.
So there's a lot of South Asians, particularly like Bangladeshis and Pakistanis. And so their parents, who had emigrated at 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, tended not to pick up the language, certainly not very well. But their children, on the other hand, who were in school with me from a young age, were perfectly able to acquire the language. So I thought I'd seen it and I knew it could be done. But yeah, in Hong Kong, even still, it's so difficult. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why. I know that learning Chinese is more difficult than English because it's 2 systems. I get that. It's just not happening. And I don't know why. I wish it was.
Because children here in Hong Kong, they have access to English. Basically, it's like all around them, but perhaps it's selective. It's like a matter of selection. So because I have a nephew who speaks fluent English and he never attended any tutorial classes. So if you're interested in the language, then you'll absorb it naturally.
Yes.
But we have so many resources online now.
Yes.
But if you're not, then you just close yourself off to that part.
But I'm actually talking about it like the other way around. If you want to learn Chinese and you go to a Chinese school and you live in China, it's just still not possible to learn it either through formal instruction or naturally. It's just not working. And I think that's systemic problems.
Let's take a quick break to talk about something that can make all the difference for your child's educational journey. I'm thrilled to share that this episode is sponsored by Top Schools, your trusted partner in navigating the complex world of school applications. If you're aiming for a top independent school in the UK, Top Schools offers personalised consulting to ensure your child finds the very best fit with a guaranteed outcome. From identifying those best fit schools to crafting standout applications to invigilating the entrance exams, the expert team is with you every step of the way. Ready to take control of your child's future? Visit topschoolsadmissions.com or click the link in the show notes to learn more and book a consultation today. Use the code DESTINATION for 20% off. That code is DESTINATION for 20% off personalised support for entry into a top independent boarding school in the UK. Now, back to our conversation.
So, how did you become a tutor?
Back in 2016, yes, I was kind of at like a crossroads about what to do with my career. I had like different jobs. I used to be a programmer. And I found that I was quite interested. I've always been interested in how people speak. It's like, perhaps I can go in this direction because I'm also interested in helping people improve their English. And I'm quite observant to how people speak and how people talk. And then so I decided to pursue the TESOL certificate from English for Asia. I'm like, I think this is the one. I want something legitimate. I don't want one of those online ones that doesn't just gets me a cert, but doesn't prepare me. And after that, and then I started tutoring after I got that full-time certificate. Well, that was harsh. That was a really tough to do.
I did it as well in 1996. You did it in when?
2016.
So I did it like 30 years earlier than you. Why do you say it was tough?
The workload was really tough. I worked until 12 to 1 in the morning every single night just to get the things done. And there were a lot of practice sessions. Like they'll get students from like outside and then we can like have like trial classes. And those were always like really intensive because you get so nervous. You're like sweating bullets.
Were you teaching adults or children for the
adults.
trials?
Yes. And then after I got the certificate, because it's much harder to get adult students because there's no source, right? They don't know how to reach me. And so it's always easier to start off with students because that's always the easier way to go.
Yeah.
And that was also quite exhausting, genuinely exhausting. Yes. And then I decided, perhaps I can start teaching adults. And then that's how I started the Instagram channel.
Yeah.
And fortunately, that kind of worked fairly well.
Yeah, we'll get on to that. Yeah. I mean, I started teaching, I did the same as you. So in 1996, which is 30 years ago, I think, I took it at the British Council in Wan Chai, an old building. And I found it tough because, I mean, maybe you have the same experience. Like, I didn't know grammar. And so, we're in a bunch of mostly native English speakers or near native English speakers. And, they're talking about the past perfect tense. And you're like, what? Because we didn't learn that stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, did you learn that stuff in elementary school?
I didn't, like barely. Yes. So a lot of the grammar stuff I actually started learning when I became a tutor, like gradually. Of course, even like a little bit in the TESOL course.
Yeah.
But mostly just I had to pick it up myself.
Do you use it in your teaching now? Do you think that it's useful for the teaching?
I do, because for adult students, it's interesting. So, of course, some are just into spoken English, like I want to learn spoken English. But it's surprising to find quite a few that are interested in the explanations behind it. Like, why? Why do we use this? Like, why do we say it that way? And then the grammar comes in handy because a lot of times you'll find that they say, some tutors can't explain it. They just tell me to memorize it. Like, that's just the way it is. I'm like, well, that's not fun for the student, right? If they're eager to learn, then you need to put
For example, can you give me, I'm not to put you on the spot,
okay.
But well, let me ask you about your moniker, if you like your Instagram account or the way that you refer to yourself is Simon Sir.
Yes.
This is not grammatical. And so how does it work? Is it a translation of some sort? Or?
Yes. So how I got this name, the word sir in Hong Kong, a lot of times students refer to male teachers with the word sir. And
female teachers as miss.
Yes. And then so with usually it's with their last name, but I don't want to call myself Wong Sir. So I use my first name, so Simon Sir.
Why isn't it Sir Simon?
Because that's not the way students use it in Hong Kong.
Why? Because it's funny, isn't it? Like you see those tutor kings or tutor queens, like their name, their big face on the back of a bus.
Sir, right?
Or, something Sir. Yeah. No, I understand the idea of Sir as a teacher.
Yes, I had someone point that out to me. Like, you do know that Simon Sir is grammatically incorrect. Like,
yes, why I wanted to ask you about it. Yeah. I'm trying to think of an example as well. But like there are some things that we say in English that in Hong Kong it feels weird. Because the Cantonese grammar, or even the Mandarin grammar, is actually really fairly simple, isn't it? And you think that English grammar is more complicated.
It is, and there are tons of exceptions, right?
Yeah, more rules to break. Interesting. So what is your secret sauce, if you like? I think you've got a slightly different way. You obviously learned what you learned in the TESOL, but like thousands of people have learned that before you. And I think you've got a slightly different take on it.
Because I mainly teach adults, and I'm an advocate of using their first language to help them understand English because they do have perhaps 30, 40, 50 years of Cantonese under their belts. So why not use that? Because I find that quite a few of them, they usually start out with native tutors who do not speak any Cantonese at all. And they struggle because they have all these ideas in their head, but they can't
the point of the way the English for Asia teach the TESOL, and I did it like TEFL at Cambridge. But the actual pedagogy underlying that is you do not use the student's first language to teach. So you're absolutely bucking against that. That's all right. Yeah.
Yes, I use something from
Disruptor.
Tutor. Yes.
Yeah.
And I find that especially with pronunciation, I find that perhaps a lot of students in Hong Kong, they don't know how to pronounce that TH sound, like that sound. And I will help them to imagine. So imagine someone who has a slight speaking disability. And so someone who speaks like this.
Yeah.
Yes, and then everybody can mimic this. Then that means you can produce that TH sound. It's just that you don't know when you need to do it.
How do you teach a Cantonese speaker to say crisps? Even as an American, you can say it because you ask Americans and they often can't say it. Yeah.
Everybody ends up saying something like crips. And then that would bug me. Like,
yeah.
Yes, Chris, I would say, okay, think of the name Chris. And then you need to be able to pronounce that PS sound on its own, like psst.
Yeah.
So it's Chris and then psst. So at first you need to have like a slightly longer break in the middle and then just gradually bring the gap closer and closer together.
Okay.
It works.
I've got another one. I was at somewhere this morning and the lady kept saying, oh yeah, we use this area when we have guesses. She's saying guests. How do you teach someone to say guests? It's this consonant cluster, isn't it?
Yes.
That's a problem for Cantonese speakers.
For me, sometimes I think those clusters I may choose to overlook for some of my students. If I believe they do have the potential to nail it, I will go and teach it that way. So think of the word guess on its own and then usually it's pronounceable and then see if they can actually grasp the guess and then bring it closer together. Sometimes you'll find that it just doesn't work, especially for adults when they don't have that muscle memory. Then that's a battle that I need to forego.
Yeah.
There's no point to.
It doesn't really matter, does it?
I don't think it does, right? If you say there are 10 guests, then it's okay.
Yeah, it's guesses. I've got lots of them. Let me think. The other couple of the ones I can remember from my English teaching days is you want to buy something, you want to purchase it.
Yes. The stress.
The stress on the wrong syllable.
It's always
Oh, look at that. Oh my gosh, I gave up English teaching in full time. I gave up in 2012.
Okay.
When I started
there a specific
this business.
reason why?
Well, I started Top Schools. Yeah, I was pretty happy. I was working in university teaching teachers, which is how I got into what I'm doing. Because then I went into schools and I was evaluating the teachers because the government did this flip-flop with the Chinese medium of instruction, English medium of instruction. And then there came a time in 2000 when all of the service teachers in schools, they may have been using English to teach their subject, but they hadn't been benchmarked. Their own proficiency was random. And then the government introduced this test that they said, okay, now we're going to have to pull you in for an assessment and make sure that you are qualified to teach the thing that you've been teaching possibly for years previously. So you can imagine they weren't best pleased about this. And I had some sort of like old guys. I was relatively young at the time. I had some old guys in my class like really arguing with me over points of grammar, but they were definitely second language speakers. And then they're trying to teach to the next generation. It was bad. I was shocked.
I think you can tell from the way a lot of, I wouldn't say the older generation, like people in their 30s, 40s, or 50s, the way they speak English, a lot of the misconceptions are from school.
Yeah.
And that means, I think those teachers were not as qualified as they should be. And that's unfortunate, right?
But that's a persistent problem because no matter how much they might like to introduce more English language learning into the schools, they just don't have the qualified teachers. It's interesting you say that, though. You think that people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, but I think people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, I don't know if sometimes you get into a taxi and they're fluent. And so I don't know what happened in the education system at a certain point in time that
I think somewhere in the middle, especially near the time when Hong Kong was returned to mainland China, like I think around that period, the language started to shift. Like people started shifting from like English oriented and then they started becoming more Cantonese oriented. That's when you saw that really big dip in like the ability to speak English. I think it's definitely true. People in their 60s and 70s, a lot of them are very fluent. The legislators, their English, wow, it's impressive, right? They sound nice. They can write well. It's just impressive.
The science of English language learning. Have you studied the science of it a lot?
I haven't.
You haven't? No, neither have I. Your students, how old are they? Do they range in age?
Yes, they range from generally mid-30s to I would guess late 50s.
So have they reached the point where we talked about necessity earlier? Have they reached a certain point in their lives? Is it a point of I really need to get my act together and I really need the English, or do you think it's a desire or a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both. Like there's that group when they suddenly, let's say they've been promoted and now they need to interact with a lot of native speakers. And so we have some of those. And actually for a part of my students, they don't actually need English. Like, I just want to learn. I just want to improve. Oh, that's interesting. Like I've always wanted to learn English as a child, but that wasn't very fun. They said there's some bad experiences. And then now as an adult, they want to learn English in a fun way. Okay, that's nice.
Do you see any difference in the efficacy of their learning? Are the ones that are they more motivated if they need to learn?
They are motivated, but unfortunately, because as you get older, your retention, your memory retention, right?
Interesting, isn't it? And actually, I'm sure you're younger than I am, but it's good. I mean, we talk a lot, my friends and I, about keeping your brain active and keeping the brain cells active for longer to ward off what might happen. So in a nutshell, we've sort of danced around the idea, and I'm interested to hear more about your approach. You said it's fun. So what is your approach?
My approach is to find things to help them remember or be better able to recall what they've learned. So I think many years ago, I was watching this YouTube video of this English teacher that I really liked. And then she gave this concept that a new piece of information is like a single key without keychains, and you will lose this. And then it would be very hard to retrieve this piece of information. And for me, like I said, because a lot of my students, they have so much Cantonese in their mind. So I try to build like these keychains, like associations with things that are perhaps interesting, things that might trigger their interest, things that are funny, or even something outrageous, because that helps them remember things. And I try to think of these different things to help them remember what they've learned.
Yeah. Do you focus on themes and contexts that are of interest to them, like what they are already interested in?
Yes, that's true. Yeah. I think for teachers, it's important to perhaps sort of tailor make your lesson so that for every student, there's something that they connect to or something that they respond to more easily. So I think this is important.
Do you focus on speaking and listening, reading and writing both?
Maybe a little less writing for adults unless they need it.
Well, do you think they need it anymore? I mean, for goodness sakes, I'm hardly writing any English these days because my friend Gemini and we're very close, you know. Yeah.
That is true, right? That part is going because there are students that come to like, I don't need to learn writing because I can just pass it to Gemini or Perplexity. Yeah. So the speaking to spontaneous responses is what they're looking for.
Yeah. And when I speak with leaders, educators and for children, no matter what language that they're speaking in, it is language, and because we're talking about English language, we'll stick with that for now, is how you build relationships, right? You can't fall in love unless you have a common language. You can't develop a friendship, and you can't employer, colleagues, we still need language. And I think it's just going to become more and more important. If nothing else, I think the schools should absolutely, the local schools could ditch a lot of that meaningless claptrap that they teach, and all that homework that's nonsense, that's not necessarily going to serve the children well. But the languages, focus on Cantonese and maybe Mandarin and English I think, would be time better spent.
I think the education system hasn't really evolved as quickly as it should have, right, to the changing society. So that's going to be an issue. It's almost like you're holding them back, right? You're not moving along with how fast everything is changing.
No, but it's such a dinosaur that and its policy and all of that. So most of your adult students have gone through the local education system, right? Do you notice or do you speak with them about how they learned or didn't learn English in school and yeah?
I think I would say the majority of them would tell me they have a lot of misconceptions because let's say when we're having lessons and I point things out to them, they'll be like, oh, that's not what my teacher said. So for example, AEIOU, let's say we're reading acronyms, right? Acronyms. And then they'll say, oh, it's an H. Like, why? Why an H? It's an H. And they'll say,
H for hotel.
H. Yes. So let's say we're reading the acronym, so HBO. So an HBO program. And they're like, why?
Yeah.
And then you explain, it's like, well, that's not what my teacher said many years ago. And then you have to tell them that's really not the case. So normally I would say teaching like really young students, sometimes you need to simplify things. Yeah. But for some reason, along the line of their like education, nobody told them that it's like untruth.
Blind leading the blind. Such a shame.
That's the majority of our students.
But I think that relates to what I was saying when I went into these classrooms and I saw these teachers have been tasked with teaching the English language, yet they themselves haven't grasped it. They haven't mastered it. They must have felt, I imagine that they felt and probably still do feel quite vulnerable and insecure.
I believe so. I think this may explain why they're so defensive.
Yes.
Right, when they come to you.
Very difficult position to be in. I do sympathize.
Unfortunately, it's a defense mechanism. And then because they would be too proud to admit that they're not actually qualified for that role. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's tough. But are you familiar with the NET scheme in Hong Kong?
I'm not. I know some NET teachers, but I'm not quite familiar with this.
No, and I think it's changing all the time and that. But
I think the interesting thing about NET teachers is that because they're from so many different countries, so sometimes you get a NET from America, sometimes like Canadian, like British, and then you just don't know which accent the student picks up.
Interesting. So, okay, I'm glad that you raised it. Do you teach accent at all?
I will I will try to adjust my accent so the student can practice the accent that they would like to practice it. So American and British, of course, it's just some
British.
I can only do like certain words, like make sure, let's say I won't say I can't. I would say, no, you need to say I can't. That's the way
you did it very well. My kids that grew up here, I shouldn't call them kids. I don't like that. That's baby goats. My children, one of them, and they both went to different schools, not necessarily international schools, but they did have teachers from Australia, from the UK, from US, Canada. So one of them ended up more so than the other with this kind of international school kid accent. And she used to go like, I'm going to go and dance at the party. And now she's lived in the UK for a lot longer. And then I notice, and we have a house in a city called Bath in the UK. So usually I'm going to Bath. And now she says, I'm going to Bath and I'll dance at the party.
Yes.
My parenting goals. But that's interesting. I mean, accent. And I met a guy once who spoke perfect American English. And I was surprised by his background because he was in a local school. How did you learn your perfect American English? He says, I watched a lot of Friends.
I get that a lot too, right? It's a show that helped a lot of people learn English.
Yeah, I mean, and made us laugh too. I was going to ask you, do you recommend, especially for parents of younger children as well, they kind of dump them in front of the TV or an app, and they think it's working. And do you recommend TV for language learning?
I do, but definitely something that's more relatable, like to everyday things. I guess this is why Friends is so popular, because it's something perhaps that you might encounter in like an everyday situation. The unfortunate part is because Hollywood or American television is the mainstream, and you're not going to really pick up like Australian accents or British accents, because most of the shows that perhaps you would find interesting or people would recommend would be from America. And then so unless you want to pick up an American accent.
Does it matter? I mean, do you actually have these conversations with students about what accent or
Very few do.
It kind of gets mixed up in the
It does. So
mixing bowl, and it kind of works, doesn't it?
There are some students that prefer British accent because it's so posh, right? They would like the British accent. But then, well, do you say privacy or privacy? Say privacy. Like, well,
tomato. I mean,
yeah, you get a few of the words. That's basically, do you spell center with an R-E or E-R? But some things, you can't be helped, but they will let me know, and then I will tell them upfront that I'm not the best person to learn British English from. Yeah, I would tell them. But to them, usually it's still okay.
So tell me more about so you started to tell me a bit more about your approach. You really like to explain the why. And so you have a good understanding of grammar, probably better than I do. Don't ask me about relative clauses. That traumatized me, dangling particles or what have you. And then how do you measure their progress, or do you? Or how do you sort of see, you go, 6 months ago, my student was here, and now we can definitely see that they've progressed.
I think for adult students, I always take a part of the time from every lesson to do some revision, because like I said, that part, it goes or it disappears. Whatever they've learned disappears from their head. And I find that just the repetition, like the forced repetition, because not every adult will find the time to revise on their own when they're not that diligent. And I find that it actually helps. And then it's actually, you put them in a comfort zone. Let's say for the first 10, 15 minutes, I will revise everything that we've learned, or I will just spot check, some things that we've learned to make sure that they're still on top of the material. And I think for adults, it's unnecessary to be too strict in terms of, I want you to remember every single thing that we've learned in the past because they're not children. And to them, that puts a lot of stress on them. So for me, I just do like spot checking, I would say, to make sure that they are still able to do what I hope they are able to do.
Like, for example?
Let's say politeness. Okay, let's say, remember not to say, I want da 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 da. Or do you want da da da? So if you want to be polite, then make sure you use the would you like or I would like. And then so maybe a few months down the line, like, okay, you're at a restaurant and you're ordering. So I'll tell them what they need to order. So I'm the waiter. Please tell me how you would order. And then from that, I would see if they remember the polite. Like, oh, that's not very polite.
Is that because if they're directly translating from Cantonese, Cantonese is very straightforward, but it's very efficient as well. You don't have, I'm not sure, but we have people listening from all around the world, right? I learned Cantonese. It's really bad, right? Like, but some of the vocabulary is fascinating. So sorry, this is a slight reversal. Some of the words that weren't invented like back when. So things like feige, like airplane, fridge. Can you just explain like the words and the translation? Like they just qualify the machine, right? Like the computer is a...
Okay, yes. So feige is a flying machine, right?
Which is so cute and it's so obvious, right?
Yes, and then what do I have? Computer, 電腦, and electronic brain. Electric brain.
Yeah, and what are some of the others? Like the fridge is an ice cupboard. Do you not think about that? Because isn't that funny? So you are a native speaker of Cantonese and I'm not.
Yes. And it's fascinating, right? Maybe that would help you actually remember how to say those words, right?
Because it's so logical.
Yes, for me, I never thought about that.
And counting in Cantonese, I believe, I have a non-scientific theory.
Okay.
Obviously, all around the world, the Chinese are known to be like super geniuses at maths, right? And then the British send all of their teachers to Shanghai to learn from the Shanghai teachers, how do you teach these children to be so brilliant at maths? I don't think there's any secret source. I think it's the way that the counting mechanism of Chinese is so logical. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay.
And then it's 2 10s and 3 10s and then 100 and like that. It seems so logical.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. Like the way you name the numbers, yes, I would say.
So we've got 20, 30, 40. We have to remember different words. But in Chinese, you don't have to. But it also breaks it all down into units, which seems so logical.
Have you ever struggled with teaching students 13, 30, 15, and 50?
Well, no, I don't teach anymore.
No, I'm back in the day.
You're bringing up trauma, Simon. But why can you explain to me in Hong Kong, 3 and 5 are always mixed up?
Yes, I wonder why.
Why? You don't know why?
I have no idea.
Oh, we have to find
out. Maybe like even after teaching the same student for 2 years, she still struggles with 13, 30, 15, and 50.
But they're not the same at all in Chinese, and they're not the same in English either. So, okay, while we're on that topic, one of my questions is, I don't know if you can, what are some of the always often mispronounced words or some of the things that people get mixed up from Chinese to English?
You mean in translation?
Well, just like the example you just raised, like a lot of Cantonese speakers mix up 3 and 5. We don't know why, but that's okay. We'll let it go. What else do they mix up or struggle to pronounce or struggle to understand?
What I'm thinking is a little bit more grammatical.
Okay,
how about this example? I think a lot of Hong Kong people, they'll think of the word late. I'm not sure if you know Cantonese. Late is 遲到.
Late.
Yeah, the concept of late in Cantonese, it actually sounds like an action. Then that means when they think of the word, when they learn the word late, they'll use it like a verb. Okay. So, I late today, late tomorrow. And then, oh no. And they say, I late for 10 minutes. I'm like, oh no. Right. That would take a pretty long time to fix, actually.
And then why do they say like on the television or on the light or off the light?
Preposition is really challenging for them as well. I think even in of course, for the word on, sometimes like, it's on the surface. Of course, it was on. So on TV instead of like in the TV. But sometimes it's just less straightforward, like prepositions like with. And they always was like, why with? Like, why did I have a fight with or over? Like when you get to like the slightly fancier prepositions, they're like I can't do prepositions. And then they kind of like, it's okay.
I think we've covered a lot of ground. What are some of the tips that you would have someone you would advise if an adult, like they went to local school, they feel like they were slightly shortchanged on the English language front, and they've reached a point where they really want to improve? What would your advice be?
I would say they should find themselves a tutor, because this is, of course, they don't need to come to me, but they need someone to give them a direction. But aside from the direction, they need to be interested. They need to be immersed in it, because I find that a lot of people, they don't do that. They don't watch the English program. They don't read, and they just rely on that tutor. Well, that's not very helpful, because that's not nearly enough. Right, time in with English for you to improve. So they need to have that authentic material. They need to have that magazine, that book, that television program. Because of course we have AI can help us with a lot of different things, but sometimes the explanation may still not be as good as like what a tutor would be able to provide. So I think they need that guidance from this person along with that immersion. I think that's pretty much.
What do you think should be the balance? Because I think I'm thinking that I totally agree with you. Like immersion, context, necessity is going to be the ultimate motivation. And I believe that language learning will be greatly accelerated. Yet at the same time, they would need to check in with a guide, if you like, or tutor. What do you think would be the balance? Majority would be immersion and
I believe definitely
life?
Majority would be immersion. I think that tutor, that guide, perhaps it's just something, I think even weekly for an hour. Let's say this is the schedule most of my students have. And I think for them, that's enough, right? So weekly, you have a list of questions that you've encountered when you're watching that Instagram reel or when you're reading. And then the teacher will be, or the tutor will be able to explain that to you. But everything else is just up to you, right? Sometimes I think the reading part is not so much about learning. The reading part is to help you remember what you already know. Right? So if you want to not forget things that you already know, then you have to really read.
It's about developing that muscle memory that you were talking about earlier. Yeah, it's the same with children, actually, even first language, but definitely for second language learners. Like when I think my children learning Chinese, like going to a tutor once or twice a week, not my children, but some of the families that I advise, their children are in English school like all day, every day. And then they think that going to a Chinese tutor like once or twice a week, I mean, it's good, it's better than nothing, but it's not going to work. I mean, we used to take our children to the middle of the countryside in Taiwan and leave them there for 2 weeks. At that period, oh my goodness, the immersion and the progression in that 2 weeks was just immense compared to like a whole term of a weekly tutoring session. But but not to undermine. I mean, obviously, you need a good tutor.
Yes. Sometimes it's like an over-reliance, I would say. It's like a misconception of what a tutor is supposed to be able to do for your children.
I've watched your Instagram account. We'll put your Instagram handle below. So just tell me really briefly, completely off topic. So Instagram took off for you, did it?
Yes, it did. Fortunately, a few years, maybe in 2022, 2023, yes, it kind of took off. I think it was quite fortunate that because I pay attention to how people speak, and I picked up a lot of these common mistakes that I would try to use a simpler way for them to quickly understand like the mistake and then how to perhaps correct them in a way that's easily understandable to working adults, I would say.
And so like just to come full circle, you are almost a sort of a disruptor in this space, because you're saying that I've watched your reels and you use a lot of Cantonese to explain English, whereas like I said at the beginning, that's not the generally accepted wisdom, is it? It works for you and it works for your students.
I believe a good teacher should be flexible in the way they teach. So if you think something may work better, even if it's a little bit unconventional, yes, do it by all means, because it's for the benefit of the students.
I'm all for being unconventional. Thank you, Simon. It's been fascinating. We'll follow Simon on Instagram. We'll put the handle below. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me, Ruth.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening. If today's episode sparked questions, or if you're ready for support with UK boarding school admissions, we're here to help. Reach out to us at www.topschoolsadmissions.com or follow the link in the show notes. Your child's exceptional UK boarding school educational journey starts with a conversation, so let's have a chat.